Aloha, my name is Tara Coyote and I'm here in Isla Mujeres off the coast of Cancun, Mexico. This very inspiring shark conservationist activist guide, Hex, who I was super inspired to interview because he works with sharks, and I'm really wanting to shift the consciousness around so much fear around sharks. As a mermaid, I find that that's the number one question I get is, aren't you afraid to be in the ocean with sharks? So I really want to dispel that myth, and I'm really thankful to have this time to talk with you here today. So here's Hex. If you could tell us a little bit of your story of how you got interested in sharks and doing what you do, that would be lovely.
Yeah, so I have been interested in sharks since I was a little kid. I grew up in Florida, and my mom is a beach person, loved going to the beach. And kind of to occupy myself when I was at the beaches, I would go look for shark's teeth. There's a lot of beaches in Florida, you can always find shark's teeth. And that just kind of sparked and started me down a whole path where I became fascinated with sharks, the different teeth I can find, and started to be able to identify what sharks it was from the teeth, and just that led into wanting to know more about those sharks, and starting to read shark books, and eventually that snowballs down to actually going out into the water and swimming with sharks, diving with sharks. And after doing that as a guest and tourist for years and in a number of places, it just eventually became, well, I want to start being that person in the water who's there every day and getting to actually work with and knows the sharks personally. So that's kind of how I got into sharks. So
Great. Would you call yourself a shark whisperer?
I wouldn't call myself a shark whisperer. I definitely have spent a lot of time with them. My goal has been to spend as much time with as many different species in as many different places as possible. So I've got a fairly wide array of behaviors I've been able to quote unquote study, learn from, and get to know how they behave. And through that knowledge of how they behave, I know how I can, essentially speak to them through body language, and, what types of things, draw their interest, can get them closer, what kinds of things they don't like, draws them further away. So I feel like I understand sharks well enough to where, there's definitely a non-verbal communication that happens, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a shark whisperer.
I would call you a shark whisperer, personally.
I appreciate that.
So I want to just address, first of all, the misplaced fear about sharks, because I think that's the most important message here.
Yeah.
Why do you think sharks are so feared and misunderstood?
I think it's because they are an apex predator in a place that we are so out of our element. On land, people feel so much more stable. You can move fast. It's what you're used to your whole life. But you put a person in the ocean, and now all of a sudden, even your best effort, the smallest fish can move faster and is more agile than you. So you're just so out of your element for the most part that now you take an apex predator in that world, and it's just the most terrifying thing that someone can imagine. It's mostly all in your imagination and in your mind, but it as a concept, I think, is just very scary to a lot of people. There was a study done, and I can't quote or cite exactly the study, but they did a study on words and associations people have with it, and they found that there was no word in the English dictionary that evoked more subconscious fear than the word shark.
Wow.
So it's such kind of a really imprinted into us that, like I said, it's just something that they have big teeth, they're bigger than us, they're faster than us, and it's in an environment that I can't breathe if I'm underwater, and all that it's just, I think, very much kind of a primal thing that we're afraid of sharks.
So maybe even before that movie, Jaws, there
Yeah,
was that
I
primal
think
fear. as
exactly,
well.
and I think that's why Jaws was so popular. Is that
Right.
it very much, whether knowingly or unknowingly, tapped into this primal fear
Right.
that people just seem to have.
I think it's the same thing with snakes and spiders.
I
that
agree.
primal-
I agree. As you get to something like one thing has no legs or something has 8 legs, and that's just so foreign to a degree from like it scares people. So it's a fear of the unknown, and
Right.
like the less knowledge you have about something, the more you're going to be afraid of it as well, which is
True.
part of what I think drives the investigations and studies and research all into sharks. Is like people get addicted to learning more because it makes people like similar to myself. I was saying earlier that I've spent a lot of time with sharks, so I've learned their behaviors, and now I kind of know how to act in the water because of that.
Right.
So I think that's a lot of what drives people to that as well. As part of the fear drives people's interest.
Right. So it's almost like if you have a fear of sharks, to understand them a little bit better can help to dispel that fear. So you can go in the ocean and not worry about it. so much.
Exactly. And the more people learn, I think the less people will be afraid. The more comfortable it makes people in the water with sharks, or just in the water in general. So you're not having a fear that a shark might swim up and just randomly attack you. That's generally not what happens.
Right. And I think a lot of people have fear about just being in the open ocean too. That's what
I would
think as well.
agree. I would agree. Yeah.
You also feel like the movie Jaws perpetuated that fear?
It did, but there's kind of, I feel like, a love-hate relationship with Jaws. I think it definitely put a lot more fear into people. I know there's so many people that I've been told that, after the movie Jaws, they were scared to go in the pool. They were scared to go in their bathtub.
Yep.
But at the same time, I feel like how I said, that there's kind of a fascination that comes with that fear that also drives certain people into it. I feel like there's a good bit of people who that movie helped inspire them to go into shark research. They wanted to know more, seeing something like that. I said it's probably more on the negative side, because I feel like a lot more people are scared by that movie than people who are inspired by that movie.
Right.
But I don't think it's completely bad. Like I said, I think it helps drive some people towards sharks, which I think is a really cool thing as well.
That's an interesting point. I never thought of that. It's almost like when we tap into what we fear, there's some of us that want to conquer that fear and understand it. So,
Yeah, I mean, some people it drove out of the water, some people it drove into the water, so,
true.
yeah.
And I just want to make a note of his t-shirt and tattoo. He's wearing a t-shirt that says, "I'm not a monster," with a shark.
Exactly.
And he's got this beautiful arm tattoo sleeve. Will you tell us a little bit about your tattoo? He was telling me earlier, and I think it's very fascinating.
Yeah, so
Beautiful.
this tattoo is a sleeve that I have gotten recently. It has 5 different species on it. I've got a thresher, which I got my dive master working with thresher sharks in the Philippines. I have a tiger shark, which I don't know how well you can see that. But this is a shark that I know and work with on a regular basis in the Bahamas. Her name is Elsa. Probably my favorite tiger shark in the world. The great white that is on the little bird. The great white that is on the inside his name is Brutus. He was taken by a friend of mine out in Guadalupe. Some of you might recognize this, as this actual photo in this shark became the mascot for Shark Week back in 2003. So it might have been 2002. One of those years, this shark, this exact image, was used as the mascot for Shark Week. Didn't know that when it started getting tattooed, and then it became a really funny coincidence. And then I also have a oceanic whitetip that's kind of hiding in the background here. It's kind of what they do, is they like coming up from behind in sneaky little angles because they're just very curious sharks. And then lastly, I've got the hammerheads, and these are scalloped hammerheads, but in general, I love the whole hammerhead family. But these are all sharks that I've worked with. They are my favorite 5 species of sharks. So I've kind of just got them emblazoned on my skin for them to go everywhere with me. But definitely a little bit of a labor of love to have them added, but I love being able to have my sharks with me all the time.
Yeah, it helps draw interest to the shark subject, I would imagine.
Yeah, very much a conversation starter, which I mean, it's my favorite subject to talk about, that I'll just run everyone's ears off with sharks, but it gets me starting the conversation and helping to start dispel some of that myth to anyone who sees it and thinks that, oh, that's a cool tattoo, and then like, okay, cool, let me tell you about sharks.
Right. Well, I know I immediately recognized you at the airport. I saw a shark. That
Yeah.
must be him.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about it. I would love to hear your favorite shark story.
So, favorite shark story, it's funny. For me now, it just happened yesterday. We had an absolutely incredible experience with a whale shark. We were just out here doing about like a week, 4 days or so of going out, looking for whale sharks every day, and getting to be in the water with them. And yesterday, after a fairly slow day, we had this incredible experience that honestly, I feel it was very spiritual. I know there's some personal parts for you. I can let you elaborate on the before parts if you choose, but for the shark, we're heading home, and we're halfway back from the normal whale shark grounds, kind of at a point where you don't normally see them anymore. And we just happened to have this like one pop up behind the boat, and we had a couple guys who requested to put a fishing line out, see what we catch along the way back, and like it swam right between us and kind of caught our line. Like nothing that would injure it at the size that this shark is. We reversed back to it. The hook wasn't even lodged into the shark. It just, as soon as we got close to it and like some slack was put on the line, it just floated free from the shark. Right back to us, but it was at that point that it was back in the water. I hopped in the water just to I was gonna get the hook out, but the hook was already out by the time I was in the water. But then this shark just had this incredible, like I said, I feel like it was spiritual type of interest in us, and we got to get in the water for 30-40 minutes with this shark. And I mean, normally when we're out here swimming with the whale sharks is we get like a minute, a couple minutes before the whale sharks, they're so big that even with very little effort, they're so much faster than us. And this shark just hung around. I mean, everyone kind of slowly like got in the water. Some people with no fins, and like were still perfectly capable of keeping up. It went so slow to hang out with us that it was incredible. It was following people around. Like I think I literally did 2 or 3 circles in the water, like in front of it, where it just followed me on those circles. And it was, I mean, I'm still having a hard time comprehending how incredible this experience was, because whale sharks in particular, they don't tend to take a big interest in people as some of the smaller sharks do. I mean, they're just looking to, eat fish eggs and filter feed. So like something like us is not something of normal interest to them. And for it to be that interested in us and spend that much time with us, I feel like it was just such a blessing. And like, I've never really believed in signs before, but this felt like a sign to me. And it was just absolutely incredible. It's something I will never forget. Just absolutely ingrained in my mind. That might end up making it into a tattoo at some point. So
Love to see
magical.
that becomes a tattoo.
Yeah.
Sweet, thank you for sharing. Maybe I'll share my part of it because it directly impacted me, and I'll share it in brief because this interview's about him. But my parents both passed in the last 2.5 years. It's been very, very challenging for me. They led safaris all around the globe. They had their own safari company for 30, 40, almost 50 years, and I got to go as a child. I was very fortunate. So when I came here to swim with whale sharks, I thought, okay, I want to bring some of their ashes with me. And I've dispersed their ashes in various sacred places all over the globe. And I put some of their ashes in the water, and Hex was filming me, and I was crying a little bit. And it just felt so sacred. And I was just thanking them and sending them my love. And then we moved on, and I was just sitting on the side just in silent contemplation because it was such a powerful moment for me. And then, like you said, there was this fishing line out, and this beautiful whale shark came up right to the side of the boat, right where I was, and then hung out on the side for a while. And I was filming it, and then Hex said, I think you should get in the water. So
Yeah.
I put my mask on and my fins, and I had my, thank you.
Yeah.
I had the the wetsuit half on, and it was just incredible. It felt like a sign from my parents that they were just sending me love. And I mean, I was literally crying in my mask in the water, and just it was such a sacred thing to swim alongside the whale shark. And just like you said, you can't keep up with them. They're so fast. And it was literally with us for about half an hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah. And I mean,
so touching.
This whale shark literally stopped us in our tracks. Like, by snagging the hook the way it did. Like I said, it wasn't like in the mouth, and I think it just caught it, and then like it stopped the boat. Like, we had to go back. Like,
yeah.
And it's just insane to have that kind of like, this would be one thing if like we saw it and we're passing or whatever and we decide, but like no, this whale shark took it into its own fins, if you want to say, to like stop us and say, no, you're gonna come see me. And then I said, once I was in the water and I saw the way that the shark was acting, I looked up at the I was like, you have to get in. I feel like this is meant for you. So it was just such a special moment. Like, I feel blessed to have you on the boat for that, because I feel like I said that it was entirely meant for you and that it blessed us as well. So it's absolutely incredible.
Thank you for that reflection and recognition.
Yeah.
Truly powerful.
Won't you take me back to where we used to play? Hang on every word, hang on every moment. I know you're in between now, and I know you can't stay. Give me one more rising sun, just one more setting moment. It felt so bright, I had to turn away, turn back around, and the moment had been stolen. You make magic out of nothing, you make my fears go away. But who will make the words, or find the answers for them? If ever I could see you again. If ever I could see you again.
So, can you share a little bit more about what you do with the sharks so people can know?
Absolutely. So I started, like I said, my dive master, as I mentioned earlier, with I went to the Philippines, and I spent a month or so doing an internship, getting my dive masters, working with the thresher sharks, which is the best place in the world for getting consistent, good sightings and interactions. Not as much interactions, I guess, but sightings of thresher sharks. predominantly an open ocean and kind of deep water species, so they're hard to see. But on this island called Malapascua in the Philippines, there is a couple little shoals that have cleaning stations that if you go early in the morning, the thresher sharks come up from the deep and they kind of get cleaned by these little cleaner wrasse, which are the little yellow guys you can kind of maybe see on here.
I saw them yesterday.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Yeah. And they'll pick all the little parasites and stuff off, so it's kind of like a daily brushing, cleaning for the sharks. They come up and do that, and you just kind of go down and sit there and you'll watch them come up, and it's beautiful. So like I started by doing that, and then my next job in sharks is I went to California to the Farallon Islands off of San Francisco. It was the first place where they started running shark tours or great white tours in the Northern Hemisphere, not necessarily shark, but great whites in the Northern Hemisphere. They'd always been kind of popular before that in Australia and South Africa, but there wasn't anything in the Northern Hemisphere, and a man named Lawrence Groff kind of started doing great whites up in California. He was based, grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, always hearing about the sharks there, and he wanted to be able to take people and show them the sharks. So I started working in a cage diving operation in the Farallons, taking people out to go see great whites, which is also a just powerful, metaphorically as well as physically, type of a shark to get to see and experience in the water. And it was funny, actually, at that time, I wasn't, great whites weren't on the top of my list. I thought they were cliche. I thought everyone liked them because they were so, they're big and they're entertaining for Shark Week. But I found out that they have just these very cool personalities, and they're very smart sharks. So that kind of drove me that whenever the shark season ended in California, I then headed over to Australia to go work for Rodney Fox, who he was involved in the Jaws movie. He was the one, any of the actual live shark footage that is in that movie was filmed by Rodney Fox. The I would say godfather of shark diving. He created the shark cage over there to take people out to go see great whites, and I got to spend a little while working there for them and just getting to see sharks on a whole nother level with the great whites. And then from there, kind of traveled through the South Pacific, spent some time in Fiji, getting to see and work with the Fijian sharks. They've got a lot of bull sharks, tiger sharks, a bunch of species, really. That was actually where I saw my first school of scalloped hammerheads, was in Fiji. Which was incredible, probably 200 plus sharks in that school. Continued from there over to French Polynesia and got to go out there. Tons and tons of reef sharks there. A lot of other sharks, but you can't do a dive, in my opinion, in French Polynesia. I don't think, at least it didn't happen for me, where I did not see a shark. And it's a very comforting thing to see, because I feel like that's what's normal for the ocean, and it's a sign of a very healthy ecosystem. And sadly, sharks have been kind of fished in a lot of spots, but it's a very healthy population of sharks in French Polynesia, and just like I said, it was very comforting for me to get to see that many sharks. And then following that journey, I made it back to North America, did some more time in the Farallons, got to do some time working in the Socorro Islands, where there's just so many shark species, a bunch of manta, really cool manta experiences there. But then worked my way back to Florida, where I've been working now for the past 4 years or so, going out to Tiger Beach with Jim Abernathy. And there I get to interact with the tigers, the great hammerheads on such a cool level. A lot of the other places is I was more so just in the water with the sharks and like taking people to see them. With Tiger Beach, I'm able to actually kind of be hands-on with them. Like they'll come up and they're a large shark that's not quite as afraid of us as some of the others, so they have no issue coming all the way up to you. And you have to like kind of put your hand on them to help deter them some. But what's incredible with working with Jim is, he has kind of discovered that they also have an affectionate side. A lot of people will like deter the sharks, put your hands on, move them away. Jim kind of more so embraces that, contact that you make, and by giving them some affection, like he's noticed that they actually enjoy that interaction and will come back more for that. To the point that we have bait in the water, which helps attract them initially, but to some degree they will pass the bait to come to me or Jim, who are in the water all the time there, and interact with them. And that's part of, like I said, Elsa is the tiger shark that's tattooed on my arm. Is I've seen her swim around a group of people and pass the bait to come up to me, because I fully believe like she recognizes me in the water same as I can recognize her, and I feel like we just have some sort of a special bond. But I get to just love on her and give her, not to say that they are puppy dogs. I don't think they are puppy dogs. That given, if I act the wrong way in the water, I fully believe she could kill me in an instant. So I'm not trying to say that they're puppy dogs. I'm not encouraging people to just go out and do this with sharks. Don't have a tiger shark come up so you can, rub on it. But with the right training, you know how to have that interaction and it be a positive one. But I have to say it's been the best job in the world for me, like getting to do that. Jim, you're not listening right now, I would do it for free. Like I just love it so much. By far the coolest experience that I think I can have on a regular basis is just getting to engage with these sharks. So it's something that's driving me, and I plan to and hope to continue to do this for probably the rest of my life.
Thank you for all the work you're doing to help inspire others.
Yeah.
Shift that paradigm.
Yeah. I know there's a long story getting there, but kind of takes the whole, way around to get there.
No, it's important. I would love to touch upon the fact of what you said. Sharks are very important for the ocean, for the balance of the ocean.
Yeah.
I think people don't really understand that. I would love to know more.
Sharks, they're an apex predator, and they kind of keep everything else in check. You have, the sharks, they don't typically attack healthy animals. They go after, the dumb, the dying, or the sick. And by doing that, they help keep the fish populations healthier. So as fish age, or if they start getting sick, and they take them out of, the breeding pool, so that you're not having fish that are not, as good in the water and as healthy, that would produce as healthy offspring. They're being removed by the sharks, and it kind of just keeps it all in check. Whenever you remove that apex predator in any situation, you start opening up the prey species to kind of start going wild, which then kind of creates a little bit of an imbalance. You get too much of the fish, which start eating too much of their prey, which then that gets diminished, and you just get very imbalanced. If you have the sharks that can keep the fish in check, then that population keeps the next population below them, and all the way down, the food chain. But whenever you lose the sharks, I said you start getting an imbalance, but you also get to where you have less healthy fish, and it kind of will actually, by eliminating sharks, will cause your fish population to eventually decline as well. And it's, a lot of people think that, oh, well, there's too many sharks, or, sharks are stealing fish from fishermen and all this, there must be too many sharks. And it's better if there's less sharks so that you can have more fish for the fishermen. But it doesn't really work that way. At the end of the day, if you eliminate those sharks, you're gonna end up with almost no fish. And that's been actually seen in a lot of places where, they have had a lot of commercial fishing of sharks. Has ended up eventually leading to fairly desolate reefs. And in contrast to that, you have places, particularly in Mexico. Mexico is amazing for protecting animals for the most part. That they have marine reserves where it once was a struggling population of fish and sharks and whatever, and they've set up boundaries that no fishing in these areas. And the amount of fish life that has come back, and I said, along with the sharks, not just the fish, not being fished, but the sharks being able to be there and not be fished themselves, has caused an overflow of the population from that area has gotten so big that it branches out and helps add to the surrounding area's population and make, again, that part of the ecosystem so much healthier and resilient by having just at least some spots where it's protected will cascade and allow the surrounding areas even to rebound. So it's very important to have them, on a larger scale. It might be counterintuitive, but they're very important.
We need the sharks. Sharks are good.
We do need the sharks.
So how can people help the sharks?
So kind of being conscious, consumers is a big thing. Being aware of, what seafood you eat. There's a lot of bycatch that happens with sharks. So, you don't want to be consuming seafood that maybe comes from kind of unethical food sources. Be aware of in places that you are how that, fishing might be taking place. There's large scale shark finning and catching operations. That, a lot of people say be against the shark fin too. Sadly, we've actually started to see where the shark fin trade doesn't quite account for the amount of shark deaths that we're seeing still happening. And it's because there's actually becoming a larger market for shark meat in general. It's not a great meat. The mercury that you can have in fish, it kind of bioaccumulates up into the larger predators like sharks, and so it's not something that is typically sold to humans, but it gets put into pet foods, and they use the cartilage for different little things. Squalene, shark squalene, is a big thing it's in all kinds of cosmetics. So you can look into your cosmetics that you use and be aware that there might be sharks that are getting killed for your cosmetics just for the squalene. It was something, even with the COVID vaccines, there was, squalene is a big part of that. There's man-made squalene, and then you can get it from sharks. And so kind of being conscious of, who you're buying from and how they get what they use. I said, because it doesn't have to come from sharks. You can have man-made squalene. So being conscious about that definitely will help them out. Sorry. But yeah, and then on a kind of a somewhat easier, broader scale is just be an advocate for them, understanding, for yourself of, that sharks are not the monsters that, they've been portrayed to be. And they're not something that we need to necessarily fear and that we need to go kill. It's something that is, they're beautiful animals. They're out here just doing what they normally do, and the things you see on TV sometimes with sharks is that's just a fraction of the time of what they do, of being, you know, in that hunting mode. But for the most part, they're just so peaceful swimming out there and not terrorizing people like you see in Jaws.
I had the honor of swimming with the Galapagos sharks in Oahu last year, and I found them to be incredibly peaceful. And the whale shark was so peaceful. Well, sharks were so peaceful too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes, face your fears, whatever they may be.
Yes, yes,
Speak up for the sharks.
yeah.
So, are there any last parting words you'd like to share? Anything that pops into mind?
I mean, mostly just don't be afraid of them. If sharks were looking to hunt people, if we were on the menu, like, shark attacks do happen. I'm not going to say they don't, but it is very rare when you consider the amount of people who enter the ocean every day. That sharks are smart. They can tell generally what is food and what is not food. Murkier water, mistakes happen more often. So if you're kind of, you know, more scared or worried about sharks, try and avoid, you know, murkier water situations. In clear water, the shark can see better and know that you're not something that's a prey item. But we see all the time, especially, you know, with it started kind of with paddleboards. Once paddleboards became a thing, people could get up out on the ocean and they saw how many sharks were actually around compared to, you know, before people were just out there swimming or like surfing, that like they started to be able to see like there is a lot more sharks than we thought were actually out here. And like the drone photography now, there's a number of people who you can see on Instagram and all over social media, they like posting drone photography from beaches where there's surfers and swimmers. The amount of sharks that are there, it's like if you're in the water at a beach and, you know, you don't get attacked, it's not because there wasn't any sharks there that day, like that you just got lucky that they were all somewhere else. Like, sharks are generally always there, like, but they do a really good job of discerning that we're not prey, and so they just swim past, like they're not bothering you. So you don't need to be afraid of sharks, thinking that, you know, they're there waiting to attack you, and when they see you, you know, maybe it's a 50-50. It's nothing like that. It's, you know, 99.9999% of the time, they will see you. You'll probably never see them, and they realize that you're not a food source, and so they just continue doing what they normally do.
They're actually quite shy, just wanting to do their thing.
They are.
We humans are really the scary ones.
Yeah, but like I said, there's not a need to be afraid of them. Like I said, I don't necessarily encourage people without training to just try and seek them out and put yourselves in what could be a risky situation, because they absolutely have the potential for harm, and it does happen. But they're not something that you need to, you know, lose sleep over and be worried about, and, you know, refuse to go into the ocean for.
Or your bathtub.
For that matter. But I mean, I always say I will go in the ocean with any shark. I've been outside the cage with great whites, oceanic white tips, tiger sharks, and you name the shark species, pretty much I've spent a good bit of time. Any like the larger ones that, you know, you could potentially be afraid of. Like, I will go in the water with any shark species as long as it's clear water where it can see me and I can see them. Like, no mistakes are really gonna happen. Like, I know how to behave back towards them. They see me, know that I'm not, you know, a food source, and it's like there's not a reason to be afraid.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
About that. Well, so how can people find you if they want more information about you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Hex HEX_diver. That's probably the best way to find me. Sadly, I'm not great at Instagram. I don't post a ton, but I do try to make posts every so often. I try to be, you know, educational about it. If you want to reach out to me, ask me questions. I mean, advice on, you know, you're going someplace, what's things you could do or something you could look for. You know, where even are shark operators? Feel free to reach out, ask me. You know, I'd be more than happy to respond. But that's probably the best way.
Well, thank you so much for taking time. It's really an honor to talk with you, and I so appreciate the knowledge. And thanks for inspiring others about sharks.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's great getting to meet you and have this great time here in Isla Mujeres.
Yeah, thank you for everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, mahalo, aloha. Bye.
Adios.
Adios.